Imagine you booked a flight months ago. You show up on time. Bags packed. Passport ready. Then the person at the desk tells you the flight is full. There's no seat for you. You didn't do anything wrong. Nobody made a mistake. The airline sold your seat to someone else on purpose. This is called overbooking, and airlines do it every single day, on thousands of flights. Today we're going to break down exactly why they do it, and what actually happens when it goes wrong. This isn't new. Airlines have been doing this for decades. Here's the simple reason. Planes fly with empty seats all the time. Even now, almost 1 in 5 seats on an average flight is empty when the plane takes off. That's a lot of wasted money for the airline. So airlines ask themselves a simple question. What if we could guess, in advance, which seats will end up empty and sell those seats too? That's the whole idea behind overbooking. Airlines don't just guess randomly, they use computer systems that study old flight data. They look at things like the route, the day, the season, and even big events happening at your destination. Some types of tickets are much easier to predict than others. Here are a few examples. If you're connecting through another airport and your first flight is delayed, you might miss your second flight completely. Airlines expect this. Business travelers often buy expensive tickets that let them change their flight for free. Because it's free to change, some of them book more than one flight just to keep their options open, planning to skip one. Airlines know this happens a lot. On old Concorde flights, this pattern was so predictable that airlines sold up to 130 tickets for a plane that only had 100 seats, and they were usually right. On the other hand, cheap tickets that can't be changed or refunded behave completely differently. If you paid for one of those, you're almost always going to show up, because you'd lose your money otherwise. That's why budget airlines overbook a lot less than others. Basically, the airline is asking one question about every single ticket. How likely is this person to actually show up? Then it decides how many extra tickets it's safe to sell. Not every overbooked flight comes from a bad guess. Sometimes it's just bad luck. If the plane scheduled for your flight breaks down, the airline might have to swap in a smaller plane at the last minute. Maybe it only has 210 seats instead of 250. Now there are extra passengers with nowhere to sit, and it has nothing to do with any prediction. It's simply bad timing. Group bookings work a bit differently too. If a big group books seats but hasn't confirmed exact numbers yet, the airline may sell a few extra seats on that flight, expecting the group to shrink slightly. But once that group booking is confirmed and paid for, the airline stops overbooking those seats, because now it knows exactly how many people are coming. Here's the surprising part. Airlines argue that overbooking isn't just about making more money for themselves, it actually helps keep your ticket prices lower. Airlines don't make huge profits per ticket. Fuel prices and other costs go up all the time. Filling every seat, even with a bit of overbooking, helps them stay in business without raising prices on everyone. It also helps people who need a last-minute ticket. Because airlines expect some no-shows, they can still sell you a seat on a flight that looks sold out, even at the very last minute. There's one more benefit most people never think about. A fuller plane burns roughly the same fuel whether it's half empty or completely full. So packing more people onto each flight actually lowers the pollution created per passenger. It's better for the environment, even if that's not the airline's main goal. Here's something almost nobody realizes. When you buy a plane ticket, you're agreeing to a long contract called the contract of carriage. Buried inside that contract is a rule that gives the airline the legal right to refuse your seat, even if you already paid for it. It sounds shocking, but it's completely legal, and it's the reason overbooking is even allowed to happen. This rule doesn't apply the same way to every kind of flight, though. Regular scheduled flights are protected by consumer laws, but charter flights are different. If you get bumped from a charter flight, you usually can't claim the same compensation. Instead, you go back to the travel company that sold you the ticket, and they try to sort out a refund or a new flight for you. Most of the time, the airline's guess is right, and nobody even notices overbooking happened. But sometimes, everyone shows up. When that happens, the airline first asks for volunteers. These are passengers who agree to give up their seat in exchange for money, a hotel, or a later flight. Almost all overbooking problems get solved this way, with volunteers. It's only on the rare occasion when nobody volunteers that the airline has to force someone off the flight. Those are the moments that go viral online and make people think overbooking is way more common than it really is. In reality, forced bumps are extremely rare, and they're becoming even rarer as airline prediction systems improve. If someone does have to be forced off, it's usually not random. People traveling alone, on the cheapest tickets, or who checked in last are more likely to be picked. Families, top-tier frequent flyers, and people in premium seats are the last to be picked. If you're forced off a flight, you're not just out of luck, you're entitled to something, and how much depends on where you're flying. In the US, the amount you get depends on how long you're delayed and whether it's a domestic or international flight. It can go up to over $1,000 for long delays. In Europe, the rules work a bit differently. Compensation depends on how far you were flying, not how long you waited. And you're always given a choice: get rebooked on another flight or get a full refund. Here's a twist you might not expect. Some frequent flyers actually try to get bumped on purpose. They pick the busiest flights on the busiest days because they know overbooking is more likely there. The payout can sometimes be worth thousands of dollars, which is often way more than the ticket itself cost. If getting bumped sounds appealing to you, there's actually a strategy for it. Popular destinations during busy seasons have the highest chance of overbooking. And here's something clever. If there are several flights on the same route in one day, and the first flight gets overbooked, some of those bumped passengers get pushed onto the next flight. That makes the next flight more likely to be overbooked too. Some travelers try to ride this chain and get bumped more than once in a day. Experienced travelers get to the check-in counter early and ask staff directly to be added to the volunteer list. When an offer comes, they don't just accept it right away. They ask for more, a better flight, a seat upgrade, food vouchers, and a hotel room if the wait is long. Airlines would rather give you these things than pay you cash, so there's often room to negotiate. If you have elite status with an airline, there's one more advantage. Overbooking almost always happens in economy class. So if there's an empty seat in business class, elite members often get it first, before anyone without status. One important thing to remember: none of this works if you give up your seat voluntarily before there's an actual overbooking situation. The airline only owes you something once it's real, not just because you offered. With everything we just covered, you'd think overbooking happens all the time. It doesn't. In the US, the chance of your domestic flight being overbooked to the point of bumping someone is well under 1%. In Europe, it's a little higher, but still rarely above 1%. So yes, overbooking is a real system running quietly behind almost every flight. But you actually experiencing it yourself is the exception, not the rule. So next time you hear the word overbooked, you'll know exactly what's going on. It's not chaos. It's not a mistake. It's a calculated guess, built from millions of data points about how people behave, and most of the time, it works so well, you'll never even notice it happening. Here's a question for you. If you got bumped today, would you take the cash or the free hotel and upgrade? Let me know in the comments.